how to create it. So I advise to go to the manual where it's easily shown how to do everything step by step. Also, the video will show you, and probably already did so, but also in the days, the preparation will help you with assembling the actual flight plan. So you have plenty of opportunities to actually play around with it. So I've done a few things related to the flight planning. So you use the flight plan assembly tool. So now that we have our image acquisitions times and the roll angles required, we put them in the flight plan. But there are a few advices that we give based on our experience during the commissioning. So I think most of them are also explained in the operations user manual, by the way. But basically what we advise is to switch on the camera 10 minutes before you want to actually take the image. And the reason for it is because since the camera is most of the times off, it's quite cold, there's no power dissipated. And we want to make sure that if we take an image, then that the temperature of the camera is within its preferred operating temperature range. So that will benefit the quality of the image. So we've seen that if we switch it on 10 minutes before taking the image, the temperature is above 0 degrees and is actually around or within the range that is preferred. There's sufficient power, so it's okay to switch it on longer than only just for the images. Then second, the ACS roll angle, also there, it's advised to give it at least several minutes before you take the image that the roll angle will be set, because the ADCS needs some time to point to the right direction. And in principle, it's quite fast, but do take into account that if the satellite exits eclipse and goes into the sunlit part of the orbit, it takes a couple of minutes to readjust itself because it doesn't have sun sensor input during eclipse. So you need to take that into account if you're gonna image something at quite a high latitude. So yeah, that's what we advise there. And then, and I think David also explained this nicely, the operations user manual, probably did so before already, is that, make sure there's some time in between the commands. So as an example, I've shown here let's see if I can move this, but I've shown here sort of the order of commands that we usually use. So we first set the roll angle. We actually did it during commissioning. If we had one target or something, we set it sometimes even already half an hour before or 20 minutes before. But you can also do it 10 minutes or even 5 minutes before. But at least that was always the first command we sent. Then we switched on the camera 10 minutes before we took the image. And then in between, we erased the image slot. So the ID that we're going to use for the image. So let's say we assigned image ID number 200. Then we erased image slot 200 to make sure it's empty. Then we took the image. But between the camera and power on and erasing.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Can you move your
That's okay,
this a little bit out of the screen so they can see this one?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was trying, but yeah, now it works. Yeah. So once we switch on the camera, we always give it 1 or 2 minutes to fully initialize itself. Because if we would switch on the camera and within 1 second erase an image slot, then the camera won't be booted yet. So it's always advised to take some time and allow at least for 1 minute, and sometimes 2 minutes between those two commands. The same for erasing the image slot, taking the image. And then, for example, when taking the image and switching on the PDHU, this is where you can easily set only a couple of seconds between the commands, since those are two different subsystems. But commands that are being sent to the same subsystem, one after the other, it's advised to at least put 1 or 2 minutes in between those commands. So we set the roll angle, we switch on the camera, erase the image slot, we take the image, and then we power on the PDHU. We transfer the image to the PDHU. So that's a transfer from the camera to the PDHU. Once that is done, so we can give it 2 minutes, for example, we switch off the camera because we don't need it anymore to be on. And then we continue with PDHU action. So we move the files from the right queues, and we're going to sync the image list, and that basically allows us to get a file list later and see which images are on the PDHU. And then we're going to power off the PDHU and only switch it on, or we're going to leave it on depending on when the ground station passes. But this is basically the order that we're going to use. So if you have this flight plan in place, then this flight is ready to take the images. Again, this is all written in the operations user manual, but also, it's going to be shown in the coming pass blocks, the coming days as well. How to set up this flight plan, and you'll be doing that yourselves as well. And we can check whether everything is set up correctly. Okay, so then the other use case that I wanted to describe, it's the last part I have, a few slides only, is one of the weekly tasks that we described in the user manual is the time syncing of the platform with the GPS. So why do we do this? We want to regularly update the system time with GPS time, high time accuracy. So you can also upload the time from the ground, but with GPS it's always more accurate. Based on taking images and getting the data and seeing how accurate the images we're taking close to the target, we advise to do it on a weekly basis. You can do it more often, but in principle once per week is sufficient. And since there's only a limited number of passes in Thailand, if I'm not mistaken, two in the morning and 2 in the late night or in the late evening, we advise to do this all through a flight plan so that it costs you the minimal amount of time during your passes, and you can use those to download as many images as you can. So updating the system time will make the moment, let's say, will make the time on board of your satellite more accurate. So that means there's less difference between what you predicted and the onboard time. However, one of the things we always did when taking images is to take multiple images one after the other. So even if you're 1 second too late or too soon, you will still capture the target because you've scheduled for more images. So I'll quickly go back to the New York case. So, this is the timestamp given, so at 15 hours, 47 minutes and 6 seconds. So what we did during commissioning is we took an image at exactly this time. But I've also added an image before and an image after. So 4 seconds before this time, so at 15 hours, 47 minutes and 2 seconds, I've also asked the operators to take an image, as well as 4 seconds after this period. So we have 3 images in rapid succession, and they will also have some overlap due to the spacing of 4 seconds. And that increases the chances of hitting your target. In case, indeed, let's say the estimated time is 1 or 2 seconds off, then at least there's a very high probability you will reach the target. So this is also a way of improving the accuracy of the system by taking more images one after the other. So this is something you can think of doing, especially if you're not planning on taking a lot of images per day. Let's say if it's only 1 or 2, I would advise to simply add additional images before and after. Okay, so how does this look? So again, we've also advised the user manual, but basically we assume here, or what we've seen from the commissioning period, is that it takes GPS some time to actually lock, so that it can vary from a couple minutes to sometimes 10 minutes, or we've seen an instant where 20 minutes, which is quite long, and that shouldn't be the case. Just to be sure, we advise to put a flight plan in place where 1 hour before a ground station pass, it switches on the GPS, and then you switch on the command to load the GPS configuration. So when the GPS boots up, you still need to tell it what satellites to look for, so which GPS constellation to make use of. And that you do by loading the configuration. So the configuration is already on board, so it's a simple command telling, okay, CDSS, please push this command or this configuration file to the GPS. So this is one command, two commands. And then what we also need to put in the flight plan is that it needs to switch off the estimation mode and control mode. So it will leave the satellite uncontrolled, so it's set it to none, and switch off the CubeSense. So one of the things we've seen in orbit is that if this board is on, the GPS has difficulty in locking onto satellites. So it's a lot easier to simply switch it off for a short period to make sure the GPS locks very, very quickly, very rapid. And then thereafter we switch it on again. So these commands will need to be loaded in the flight plan, and the flight plan should activate 1 hour before a ground station pass. And then it remains in this configuration until the ground station pass. So when the satellite flies over in that ground station pass, we can check the beacons and see in the Grafana dashboard whether the GPS has actually locked or not. And you can verify that by looking basically at the status of the GPS. In what kind of mode is it? Is it fine steering? How many satellites does it see? And that shows you if the GPS is locked. And automatically when it's locked, it will push the time to the platform. So when it has a lock, you can be sure that the time has been sent to the platform. So once this is verified, you can, in the ground station pass, switch on the CubeSense again, and then set the estimation mode to the MEMS gyro EKF, and then look at the rates, and then if the rates are below 3 degrees per second, you can enable the control mode again, and the satellite will readjust its orientation again. And then you can switch off the GPS. Now you have to take care that that you can't run this at the same time when you have images planned for, because you will switch off the control mode, so it won't point to any specific roll angle. So you should plan for this on a day when you don't have anything, any image acquisition planned for. And if we have time, then yeah, I think the feed is going to show you this use case as well, pending the time we have. But this is what we advise to do once a week to sync the GPS time with the platform time. Yeah, that's it. That's all I had to tell. I think I've shown the mission use cases, so how to take images and how to prepare for them, how to prep a flight plan, and use SDK for the actual flight plan. So if there are any questions, feel free to ask them. I'll be happy to explain once more if there's something unclear.
Okay. I have one, Hugo. From the beginning of your presentation about the target planning, you said that we should separate different target apart.
Yeah, so not too close to each other, because if you need to roll, it takes satellite some time to roll or repoint to another target. So if they're too close behind each other, the satellite can't change its attitude in time, and you'll basically miss it.
How about if I plan to take an image of two targets, one in the north of Thailand and another one in the south, and the roll angle is quite close? Can I do it in the same path? Yeah,
indeed. So then indeed you can actually target both. So I think in general we stick to, and I think David can correct me. I think it's okay for the targets to be up to 2 or 3 minutes spaced apart, and then it should be fine to go to whatever roll angle. If they're really close, then like if there's only less than 5 degrees apart or even less, then I think it should be okay for the satellite to have 1 or 2 minutes between the targets for the ADCS to actually reorient itself.
Okay, thank you.
South Thailand. If the angle is very little, you can change it within the pass. Yes.
What's
Yeah, North-South Thailand, you should be able to do it.
Because Thailand is like 2,000 kilometers,
Almost.
almost.
Yeah, it's quite long.
Yeah, I should be able to.
I don't know how long it takes to go from
Probably
100 kilometers per second.
ความเร็ว 7 กิโลเมตรต่อชั่วโมงต่อวินาที7 คูณ 6
if it is
ถ้าจะ
around
มีตัวบางตัวส่งสิ่งนี่คือนาทีหนึ่ง450ก็บอก2 ถึง 3ใช่ไหมตีเป็น3 นาทีก็ได้ได้
yeah, if you change the roll angle of 3 degrees, you can achieve that quite quickly. Even within that 1 should be okay. It's an occurrence that we always see in that the satellites get out of eclipse and the roll angle shifts quickly. It should be.
It's about 250 seconds that you have between north and south.
Yeah, it should be.
So yeah,
Small angle is okay.
So do we have like a spec sheet?
ดู
ภาพประสบการณ์ของ